Hi everyone. I'm reading Dealing with Dragons instead of watching the Super Bowl. It's actually true. The Super Bowl starts in like 45 minutes. I'm not going to be watching it. Hi everyone. This is for Blue. Hi Blue. You're wonderful. You haven't commissioned something in a while, and now it's this 5 of them in a row. So this is the start of your set of commissions of this book that's blowing my mind. This is chapter 6 of Dealing with Dragons. It's called In Which let me get this right. In which the wizards do some snooping and Cimmerian snoops back. We're going to find out about the wizards. For the next 3 weeks, Cimmerian spent most of her free time studying the fireproofing spell and collecting the ingredients she would need to cast it. A few, like wolfsbane and feverfew, she could gather herself from the herbs that grew on the slopes of the mountains. Eleanor found a little jar of hippopotamus oil. Hippopotamus oil? What the shit is that? Among the cosmetics left by her predecessor, the unicorn water Cimmerian got from Morwen after promising her a copy of the spell if it worked. She went to Kazul about the white eagle feathers, though she was a little afraid to explain what she wanted them for. She didn't want Kazul to think she was worried about Kazul losing her temper and accidentally roasting her. Fortunately, the dragon found the whole idea very interesting. It could be very useful, Kazul said reflectively. There are enough hot-tempered youngsters around that it would be well worth fireproofing the princesses who have to deal with them. I'm not sure I'll be able to fireproof anyone at all, Cimmerian said. I still need the white eagle feathers and the powdered hen's teeth, and nobody seems to have any. Let's see what I can do, Kazul said, and a few days later she dropped a bundle of white feathers at the door of her kitchen. Half a feather was stuck to one of her right claws, and another was caught between two of her teeth. She looked very pleased with herself. I can only imagine she's like, oh my god, there's a white eagle, chomp. So Cimmerian had to keep putting off trying out the spell. When she wasn't working on collecting the ingredients for the fireproofing spell, Cimmerian read the Historia Dracorum. It was very difficult at first. After all, it had been a long time since her last Latin lesson. She kept working at it until she started to remember the right endings for the declensions and conjugations and cases. Shortly after that, she realized she was not having to look up quite as many words as she had at the beginning. From then on, her progress was rapid. That's cool, and she's doing it herself. That's what's so rad about this. She's like, no, I'm going to teach this myself. Or teach this to myself, by myself. It's great. It helped that she found the book fascinating. Dragon history was not a subject commonly taught to princesses in Linderwall, but as she was now a dragon's princess, she had very personal reasons to be interested. Besides, the history of the dragons was very exciting. Every page was full of descriptions of dragons ravaging villages, carrying off princesses, defeating knights and princes, and occasionally being defeated by them, and fighting with wizards, giants, and each other. When the book wasn't describing battles, it was describing famous dragons' hordes and peculiar draconian customs. Cimmerian was in the library with the Historium Dracorum in front of her, and her Latin dictionary on the table beside her left hand when she heard someone calling from the front of the cave. She had hoped it would be at least a little longer before the nights started coming back, so she couldn't help sighing as she stuck a leather bookmark in the book and closed it. Then she went out to argue with whoever it was until they went away. Two wizards were standing just outside the mouth of the cave. This is how they're snooping? They just come there? That's not very good snooping. Cimmerian saw their wooden staffs first, before she was close enough to see their faces. As she came nearer, she recognized the one on the left as Zeminar. The one on the right was taller and younger. His brown hair and beard showed no trace of gray. His blue and brown robes were identical to the older wizards, except for the colors. His eyes were the same bright black as his companions, and he looked at Cimmerian in a way that made her feel uneasy. Good morning to you, Princess Cimmerian, Zeminar said. I thought I would take you up on your kind invitation to visit. I hope we haven't come at an inconvenient time. Not at all, Cimmerian said, thinking hard. She had promised Kazul that she would try to find out what Zeminar was after if he showed up, and here he was. Maybe if she convinced him that she was as silly as her sisters, he would be careless enough to let something slip. I thought perhaps we might have, since it took you so long to come out, Zeminar said mildly, but Cimmerian thought there was a hint of suspicion in his eyes. I must not have heard you right away, Cimmerian said, batting her eyes innocently, the way her next youngest sister did whenever she had done something particularly foolish. Kazul has quite a large set of caves, and I was in one of the ones at the back. I'm so sorry. Ah, Zeminar stroked his beard with his left hand. That would make it difficult for you. Perhaps we could set up a spell for you, one that would let you know whenever anyone comes to visit. It would be more pleasant for visitors, too, if they didn't have to shout. What do you think, Aunt Terrell? Like the one at the headquarters of the society, the second wizard said, nodding. We could do it in 2 or 3 minutes, right from here. It'd be easy. Oh, no. Zeminar shot a dark look at his companion. Cimmerian was sure that he'd wanted to pretend he was inventing a difficult new spell, so that he would have an excuse to wander around Kazul's caves. Quite so, said Zeminar. Well, Princess? Oh dear, I don't know, Cimmerian said, doing her best to imitate the way her eldest sister behaved when anyone wanted her to decide anything. It sounds very nice, but Kazul is so picky about where things go and how things are done. No, I simply couldn't let you do anything like that without asking Kazul first. What a pity, Ziminar said. His companion coughed and shuffled his feet. Ah, yes, allow me to present my son, Antarel. I hope you don't mind my bringing him along. Of course not, Simrine said politely. I'm pleased to make the acquaintance of such a lovely princess, Antarel said, bowing. Simrine blinked. This wasn't getting anywhere. Maybe she brought them, or maybe if she brought them inside, they'd relax a little. Thank you, she said to Antarel. Won't you come in and have some tea? We would be delighted, Zeminar said quickly, if you'll lead the way, princess. This way, Simrine said. She stopped just inside the mouth of the cave and gave the wizards her sweetest and most innocent smile. You can leave your staffs right here. Just lean them up against the wall. She's smart. Antarel looks considerably startled and Zeminar frowned. Is this, too, something your dragon requires? He said. I don't know, Simrine said, wrinkling up her forehead the way her third from eldest sister did whenever she was puzzled, which was often. I actually like that she's taking these things, these behavioral traits of her sisters, and is using them in a way that makes them positive. It's kind of neat. But they'll be so awkward in the kitchen. Don't you think so? There's not very much room. We'll manage, Zeminar said. Simrine hadn't really expected to get the wizards to let go of their staffs, but it had been worth a try. She shrugged and smiled and led them into the kitchen, where she made a point of bumping into the staffs or tripping over them every time she went by. Finally, Antarel turned his sideways and stuck it under the table. Zeminar hung onto his with a kind of grim, suspicious stubbornness that made Simrine wonder whether she was fooling him at all with her pretended silliness. The wizards made uncomfortable conversation about the weather and the size of the kitchen for several minutes while Simrine fixed the tea and poured it. Are the rest of Kazul's caves this large? Zeminar asked as Simrine handed him his teacup. She had given him the one with the broken handle, even though he was a guest, because she didn't trust him. Oh, yes, Simrine said. She was beginning to think she was never going to find out anything. The two wizards seemed perfectly happy to sit at the kitchen table and talk about nothing whatever for hours. Remarkable, said Antarel in an admiring tone. You know, we wizards don't often get to see the inside of a dragon's caves. I'll bet you don't, thought Simrine as she gave him a puzzled smile. That's too bad, she said aloud. Yes, it is, Zeminar said. Perhaps you'd be willing to show us around. Oh, my God! Simrine thought very rapidly. It was obvious she wasn't going to learn anything if the wizards just sat at the kitchen table and drank tea, so she decided to take a chance. Well, she said in a doubtful tone, I suppose it would be all right as long as I don't take you into the treasure rooms. That's fine, Antarel said a little too quickly. You won't touch anything, will you? Simrine said as they stood up. Kazul was so particular about where things are kept. Of course not, Zeminar said, smiling insincerely. Oh, shit. Simrine smiled back and led the way out into the hall. She watched the wizards carefully as she took them through the large main cave, the general storage caverns, and the big cavern where Kazul visited with other dragons. Zeminar made polite noises about the size and comfort of everything, but neither he nor Antarel seemed very interested. And this is the library, Simrine said, throwing the door open. I'm impressed, Zeminar said, and Simrine could tell that this time he meant it. She stepped sideways so that she could keep an eye on both of the wizards at the same time. A remarkable collection, Antarel commented. He began walking around the room and admiring the bookshelves and scanning the titles of the books. What's this? Zeminar said, bending over the table. The Historia Dracorum? A surprising choice for light reading, Princess. His eyes met Simrine's, and they were hard and bright and suspicious. Shit. Oh, I'm not reading it, Simrine said hastily, opening her eyes very wide. I just thought it would make the library look nicer to have a book or two sitting out on the table. More lived in. Zeminar nodded, looking relieved and faintly contemptuous. I think it works well, Princess, he said. Very well indeed. Then he looked over at the other side of the room and said sharply, Antarel, what are you doing? Oh, no. Simrine turned her head in time to see Antarel put out a hand and deliberately tip several books off of one of the shelves. Stop that, she said, forgetting to sound silly. Very sorry, Princess, Antarel said. Will you help me put them back where they belong? Ooh, I don't like this guy. Simrine had no choice but to go over and help him. It took several minutes to get everything back in place because Antarel kept dropping things. Simrine got quite annoyed with him and finally did it all herself. As she started to turn back to the center of the room, she caught a glimpse of Zeminar hastily closing the Historia Dracorum. Simrine pretended not to notice, but she made a mental note that he had been looking at something near the middle of the book. It was dreadfully careless of you, Simrine said, frowning at Antarel. Very clumsy, Zeminar agreed. I don't know what Kazul will say when she finds out about it, Simrine went on. Really, it is too bad of you. I did ask you not to touch anything, you know. Yes, you did, Zeminar said, and I wouldn't like to think that we'd gotten you in trouble. Perhaps it would be best if you didn't mention to Kazul that we were here at all. I suppose I could do that, Simrine said in a doubtful tone. Of course you can, Antarel said encouragingly. They're so manipulative and gross if you think about it, like what they're doing. Ugh. And I'll come back in a few days to make sure everything's all right. I think it's time we were on our way, Zeminar said, giving his son a dark look. Thank you for showing us around, Princess. Serena escorted them out of the cave and made sure they had left, then hurried back to the library. She spent the next several hours poring over the middle parts of the Historia Dracorum, trying to figure out what Zeminar had been looking at. She was still there when Kazula arrived home and called for her. That wizard Zeminar finally came, and he brought his son along with him, Simran said as she came out of the library. I know, said Kazul. Her voice sounded a little thick, as if she had a cold. I could smell them the minute I came in. Is that why you sound so odd? Simran asked. You're not going to sneeze, are you? Oh, I don't think so, Kazul replied. Don't worry about it. I'll have plenty of time to turn my head away. I wish I could get a hold of some hen's teeth, Simran said, frowning. That fireproofing spell. Have you looked in the treasure rooms? Kazul asked. No, Simran replied, startled. She remembered seeing a number of jars and bottles of various shapes and sizes when she'd been organizing the treasure. None of them had been labeled. I didn't think of it, and besides, it's your treasure. You're my princess. At least until someone rescues you or I decide otherwise, Kazul pointed out. Go ahead and look, and if you find any hen's teeth, use them. Be careful when you're checking the jars, though. There are one or two with lead stoppers that shouldn't be opened. Oh, boy. What are in those? Lead stoppers, Simran said. I'll remember. Good. Now what do those wizards want? I'm not sure. Simran explained everything that had happened, including how she'd seen Zeminar closing the history book as she turned, and how the two wizards had been perfectly willing to leave right after that. But just before they disappeared, Antrell said he might come back another time, Simran concluded. So I don't know whether they found what they were looking for or not. Do you know which part of the Historia Dracorum Zeminar was reading? Kazul asked. Somewhere in the middle, a little past my bookmark, Simran replied. I was just looking at it when you came in. It's a part about how the dragons came to the mountains of morning and settled into the caves and chose a king. That's the section where the history describes the caves on fire at night, isn't it? Kazul said. Simran nodded. There was a whole page about somebody finding a stone in the cave so that the dragons could pick a king. It didn't make much sense to me. Colin's stone, Kazul said, nodding. We used it to choose our king ever since the first time. When a king dies, all the dragons go to the ford of Whispering Snakes in the Enchanted Forest and take turns trying to move Colin's stone from there to the Vanishing Mountain. The one that succeeds is the next king. What if there are two dragons strong enough to move it? Simran asked curiously. It's not a matter of strength, Kazul said. Colin's stone isn't much larger than you are. Even a small dragon could carry that much weight twice around the Enchanted Forest without any trouble at all. But Colin's stone has an aura, a kind of vibration. When you carry it, you can feel it humming through your claws, and the humming gets stronger the farther you get until your bones are shaking. Most dragons have to drop it or be shaken to pieces, but there's always one who is suited to the stone. For that dragon, the stone's humming is just a pleasant buzz, so of course it's easy to get to the Vanishing Mountain. You sound as if you've had experience, Simran said. Of course, Kazul responded matter-of-factly. I was old enough to participate in the test when the last king died. She smiled reminiscently. I got farther than anyone expected me to, though I wasn't one of the top 10 by any means. Oh, that's cool that they can have queens, too. That's really neat. Simran tilted her head to one side, considering. I think I'm glad you didn't win. Oh? Why is that? Kazul said. Kazul sounded amused. Because you wouldn't have any use for a princess if you were the queen of the dragons. And if you hadn't decided to take me on, that yellow-green dragon Morans would have probably eaten me, Simran explained. You mean if I were the king of the dragons, Kazul corrected her. Queen of the dragons is a... Wait, what? If I were the king of the dragons, Kazul corrected her, queen of the dragons is a dull job. But you're a female, Simran said. If you carry Colin's stone from the fort of the Whispering Snakes to the Vanishing Mountain, you'd have to be a queen, wouldn't you? No, of course not, Kazul said. Queen of the Dragons is a totally different job from king, and it's not one I'm particularly interested in. Most people aren't. I think the position's been vacant since Oran tore his wing and had to retire. But King Tokaz is a male dragon, Simran said, and then frowned. Isn't he? Yes, but that has nothing to do with it, Kazul said a little testily. King is the name of the job. It doesn't matter who holds it. Oh, well, shit. Simran stopped and thought for a moment. You mean the dragons don't care whether their king is a male or female? The title is the same no matter who the ruler is. That's right, we like to keep things simple. Well, okay. Simran decided to return to the original topic of conversation before the dragon's simple ideas confused her any further. Why would the dragons be interested in Colin's stone if it's only used for picking out the kings of the dragons? I doubt they are, Kazul replied. However, Colin's stone was found in the caves of fire and night. Wizards have always been interested in the caves. But the dragons control most of them, and all the easy entrances are ours. So the wizards have never been able to find out as much as they would like. The Historia Dracorum is one of the few books that talks about the caves at all. There aren't many copies. I'll wager Zeminar would have stolen it outright if he thought he could get away with it. This is interesting. I am intrigued. Okay, I'm going to make another video and then keep reading this chapter.